And I believe we're recording, Dan. So
Okay. All righty. Hey, well, thanks, folks, for everybody for joining. My name is Dan Ford. I'm a West Coast Commercial Spec Manager for American Bath Group. With me today, we have Paul Klein out of the Minneapolis area, as well as Lewis Cox. I'll introduce Lewis here just for a minute. We're going to spend the first couple slides letting you know who we are and what we do, and then we'll get right into the CEU. So please feel free to stop and ask me with any questions. I know we got multiple people from multiple offices. Love to answer any questions that you may have. We actually, since we have multiple people on here, if you wanted to put something in the chat, we could answer it that way as well. So with that, again, thank you all for joining. Dan Ford, I'm out of Phoenix. I cover the West Coast. So I'm going to talk here a little bit about American Bath Group. So American Bath Group may be the largest company that you've never heard of. We are the largest manufacturer of fiberglass reinforced shower products in the country. Just a few years ago, we were about a $50 million company. We are well in excess of $1 billion company now. And so how did we get that way? Well, it was through acquisitions. I'm going to show you a map here of our plants and some of our brands that maybe you have heard of. And my computer has since frozen. Let me see if I can get that fixed. Oh, here we go. Very good. Okay, as I stated, we're a very, very large company. It's not just Paul and I and Lewis making showers in our garage. We've got upwards of 15 brands such as Max and Aquatic and Comfort Designs and Salo. We can sell in boots. We can sell you everything from a $150 porcelain over seal tub for an affordable housing project to a $6,000 solid surface trench drain healthcare shower. We also have a very strong hospitality presence. I know you folks do some hospitality. We have a brand we acquired within the last year called IMI, International Marble Industries, out of the Southeast. They have a very, very strong, lots of spec with some national brands, as well as just a very strong hospitality presence. And so one of the really cool parts about us, since we've gotten so large, is we have a strong corporate social responsibility platform, and it is called American Bath Group Gives. We call it ABG Gives, and it is actually one of the things that I am most proud of in working for this company. It's a big part of our culture. We have partnered with 5 charities you can see on the screen: St. Jude's, World Wildlife Fund, Shriners, Wounded Warrior Project, and Toys for Tots. And every year, when we have our national sales meetings, back when we were having them pre-pandemic, we would have somebody come in, typically from St. Jude's, and give us a case study of how we positively impacted a child and their family. And it really is something that I'm very, very proud of. And so, as I mentioned, since we've become so big, we also have what's called commercial project managers, and we happen to have one of them on the line today, on the call today. His name's Lewis Cox, and basically they ensure that once a project is specified, that it gets to the field in a timely fashion. So Lewis, if you wouldn't mind jumping in and telling us a little about what you do. We are unique to having this position within the industry.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm Lewis Cox, and I hail from San Antonio, Texas. And after Mr. Klein or Mr. Ford specifies the project, I jump in, and I will watch every transaction, every project from cradle to grave. ABG is the only manufacturer in the U.S. that offers in-house project management. And after they specify the orders, I will make sure that there is a mutual assent. Everybody sees eye to eye on expectations for production capacity, delivery expectations, and most importantly, in-house or on-site installation training, which is highly critical so that the success is dependent on installation that meets local code, which is very, very important. And it's great to meet everybody. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, Lewis. Appreciate it. That is a really unique role. We've only had that around about a year, and it has made a huge impact on how we go to market. So thank you very much. Okay, so now we have the public service announcements about American Bath Group out of the way. Let's go ahead and jump into the CEU. And so thank you all for allowing us to tell you who we are. This is a CEU around code compliant bathing solutions, and we're going to talk a lot about ADA. We're going to talk some about FHA and ICC and the differences and similarities between those. The first one we're going to talk about and spend the most time on is ADA, because again, there's a lot of similarities between that and the other ones. So what we are going to focus on today is the changes that were made in 2010. Okay, so there's been 2 iterations of ADA standards. The first one was in 1991. The second one was in 2010. There's a third one that has been out. I believe it was in 2017. That has not been adopted or enforced yet. I haven't seen all the details on that one. So what we're going to talk about is what they decided they needed to do in 2010. Okay. So what does that mean for folks like yourself? Well, it just means pretty much every commercial facility that you're designing has to meet the American Disabilities Act. Okay, this is actually a law, and it was really put in place to help people with disabilities make sure that they can enter and use public buildings. So it's everything, obviously, from healthcare to senior care to student living to multifamily. Obviously, each facility has different needs depending on the person that they're serving and the number of these types of units that are required in each one of those segments. So when the ADA came out, they decided, okay, there's 3 primary types of bathing solutions that will meet our codes. And those are a transfer shower, a roll-in shower, a tub shower, and there's also one we'll talk briefly about called an alternate roll-in shower. And so if you're designing with those and you do one of those 4, and you meet 4 basically main components that you have to look at. If you're trying to meet, like to say, it's a get out of jail free card. If you're trying to meet ADA code, what do you have to do? You have to do 4 things. You have to pay attention to the inside dimensions of the unit, the clear floor space out in front of the unit, the configuration of the threshold, meaning the height or type of threshold. And then the last one is accessory configuration. Where am I putting my grab bars? Where am I putting my seats? All of those are determined by the ADA. So the first one we're going to talk about is a transfer shower. You know, this transfer shower actually is a trench drain. We're seeing a big trend. This is more of a kind of a technical presentation, but a little bit about a trend. Trends are trench drains. Trench drains are becoming more and more popular, depending on the segment. You can see this one here is a transfer shower in a healthcare facility, which really have all moved to a lot of trench drains. So why a transfer shower? So it's really just designed to provide support and stability for the person that's in there, right? It took me like a year to figure out why does this have to be this size, or what's the purpose of this? And it really is to allow somebody some support when they're sitting in there. And so how do they get that, or what are the guidelines that determine that? And so this is unique because it has an exact inside dimension requirement. So we'll show some differences as we get down the road, but this one says I've got to have exactly a 36 by 36 inside dimension. Okay, so that's the first thing. So if you do that, you're in good shape there. You're 25% in the clear. The other thing it says is I've got to have clear floor space that allows a parallel approach. So you can see in that picture there, somebody has to be able to be in a chair and have that parallel approach and the ability to get from the seat to the seat in this transfer shower. And so that requirement is 48 by 36 inches. So there's 2 of your 4 requirements right there. We're going to talk a little bit about how to do that in a shower with a return flange a little bit down the road. So what else do I have to do? Well, there is a threshold requirement. Okay, and this was actually a change that was probably one of the more significant changes in my mind in the 2010 standard. And that is, it used to be you had to have a flush entry from the floor into the shower. They have now allowed a 1/2 inch between the finished floor and the entry into a transfer shower. So that doesn't mean that the shower has to have a 1/2 inch threshold. What it means is that I have to build up my floor within a 1/2 inch to get into that transfer shower. And I will say most people still, when they can, try to do that kind of level or flush entry, but this is allowed by code. And it's different for the roll-in shower, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so the last thing we have to think about are the controls for the shower. So in a transfer shower, the shower control valve must be on the wall opposite the seat towards the front of the open side of the shower. You're going to see that's a pretty common theme in most of these, is that, hey, I need to have the ability to have somebody outside the shower as well as inside the shower have access to those controls. So that is the reason behind this location. You can see that the gray area there is where that requirement is. The other thing that is unique to a transfer shower is this L-shaped grab bar. Okay, so the idea behind this was to allow the person to have some support and move him or herself around in that shower with little assistance, right? One of the questions I get a lot, though, however, is that, hey, can I extend that bar on the back wall all the way over the seat? And the answer to that is no. They want that open. They want that to be able to be leaned against by the user. So you have a maximum of 18 inches from the control wall that grab bar can go in a transfer shower. So those are the 4 things that you have to do in a transfer shower. So the next type of shower is a roll-in shower. You can see we're also showing a trench drain here. Common themes you'll see throughout. So the advantage of a roll-in shower is that allows people to any mobility device to get in easily. It also is large enough at times to allow somebody, if they need assistance, to help them with that as well. So this is really a good shower for people who can't transfer from their chair into a seat in a tub shower or a transfer shower. And as I mentioned earlier, the transfer shower had an exact dimension. This one is different because it has a minimum. So the minimum that you have to do with this is a 60 by 30 inside dimension. So that you can go much larger. And I'm actually seeing a trend that people are using large, kind of a deeper showers, maybe 32, 34, 36. Some of those folks maybe out west in California, you got your Title 24, where you actually have to have a 36-inch deep shower. So we're seeing that trend going deeper. However, if you need to meet ADA code, the minimum is 60 by 30. And that also requires you to have a 60 by 30 clear floor space out in front of that unit as well. Okay, one of the other bigger changes in the 2010 standard was with threshold type. Okay, there's as I said, they required a level entry before. If you look at the bottom, there's 2 types of threshold. There's a vertical, and then there's a beveled, or what we call a change of level on top. I'm going to talk about the vertical first. Again, this used to have to be a level entry into that shower compartment, and the 2010 standard now allows for a 1/4 inch difference between the top of the floor and the entry into the shower. So that allows you to have maybe a little bit thinner floor if you're trying to meet that code, right? I will say this type of threshold, this vertical threshold, is more common in healthcare. And since healthcare seems to be going more and more towards trench drains, we're actually seeing a lot of folks recessing trench drain units into floors, and then we're sloping the outside of it actually back to that trench to capture water. I can kind of explain that later. However, from a code standpoint, 1/4 inch on a vertical threshold is what you're allowed to have. Now the top one is what we call a change of level or a beveled threshold. And this is essentially used more in senior care or multifamily. It allows you to have a much thinner floor, have a beveled kind of a 1/2 rise back into the unit, which still meets your code. So this is usually you'll find maybe more economical products for the senior care or multifamily segments. So those are the 2 differences, and that's a big change in the 2010 standard. Okay, there are some differences as far as accessories, whether this roll-in has a seat or not in it. So if it has a seat, the standard requires the plumbing to be on the back wall. You can see the shaded area there. It's got to be 48 inches above the floor, and then 27 inches max from the seat wall there. So you can see that in that video, which is different because you can really only reach that from inside the unit versus the other ones where we're kind of trying to have access from outside the unit. That would be a tough reach over if you had to do it. So this is kind of unique to ADA as well. Could be different in ICC, but if there's no seat installed, the plumbing can be installed on any of the 3 walls. See, you still got to pay attention to where you're putting your controls, as you can see in the picture there. But I am seeing a trend on this one because a lot of people have trouble with water containment in units where there's the control head is on the back wall and it's spraying out, particularly in a center drain unit, and we don't have a weighted shower curtain. So it's just kind of spraying out, the curtain's not keeping the water in, and it's kind of an issue. So a lot of people are going, when they can, if code will allow, depending on the state and then what you're trying to do, they'll go to these roll-ins without seats, where I can put the shower head on the sidewalls, and it helps keep the water in the unit a little bit better. Again, refer to your local codes, but ADA does allow that. So again, you have your two types. So the one on the left is the one without a seat. We call this a U-bar configuration. You'll see many manufacturers use that term, meaning have 3 grab bars here. If I don't have a seat to meet code, those are in a U. We call that a U-bar. The other one on the right is with a seat. We call this an L-bar configuration. You are not allowed to have that grab bar back behind the seat wall there. So two things to consider when designing roll-in showers. Again, when folks are trying to can get away with it, they are moving more towards the U-bar configuration. Okay, and the last one is what we call an alternate roll-in. This is kind of a combination between a transfer and a roll-in shower. And in the 2010 standard, they basically specified the inside dimensions of it as well as what the entry needed to be as far as the clear entry. So it's got to be 60 by 36 inside dimension, and you have to have a 36-inch minimum here to get into that unit. So 36-inch minimum entry there. This is kind of a combination of a roll-in and a transfer. You got to have mini transfer over here. I didn't see a whole lot of these. I've been with this company almost 4 years. I did not see a whole lot of these back when I started, but I am seeing this growing more and more as far as specification. And the reason behind that is that if I've got a seat here and I have this shower head on the back wall, it does help me contain water with this, what we call a wing wall here. This is actually a wing wall that is shipped separate from the unit. So this is going to require framing in the field. No different than these 3 walls. But however, if you get it framed, you can put that wing wall there. You do have that, in my mind, a little bit extra ability to keep water in that unit. So I'm starting to see this unit trend upward. And here's just kind of a downward looking view of what that looks like. You notice here, I like this one because it actually shows the valves on the outside of the unit. This was in a memory care facility where they wanted the controls to be operated by the caregiver versus the patient that was going in there. So there's just some really unique things that you can do with these alternate roll-ins. And lastly, the controls on this are very similar to what a transfer is. So if there's a seat, it's got to be on the wall beside the seat, just like a transfer. If there's not a seat, it must be installed on the side wall farthest from the compartment entry. And those are essentially the 4 types of showers that ADA has approved in their configurations. And I'll stop there. I know we got folks from a lot of different places, but is there anybody that has any experience or seen any issues with any of those showers in the past? Or have any questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And I may be not recalling correctly, but I think I was doing a project in California, and I think the code there required the controls to be on opposite side of where the shower head was located. Is that correct? Does that sound right?
It does not sound familiar to me, but I do know they have different codes out there. So it depends on if it was a transfer or a roll-in. And sometimes you can actually use diverter valves and move some things around to meet maybe a client's request and still meet ADA code. I do believe, excuse me, I do believe the code out there is the same where if I'm in a transfer, I got to be able to reach it from the seat. So it's got to be on the back wall. But I do know this is different because like in many instances, you're allowed to have a slide bar. For instance, some of the pictures all the pictures I showed you for a handheld assembly had a slide bar on that back wall, and they require a stationary hook in California. So there are some differences. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to email me, I could research into that a little bit for you. If you wanted to send me some details, get my information from Paul, I'll look into that because I do cover California, but I also know it gets very confusing out there.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Anybody else ever had any issues with an accessible unit not containing water? One of the biggest requests that I receive is for weighted shower curtains. Folks call after they've had a unit for a couple, 3 months, and they say, I can't keep water in this. You can put in a compressed, collapsible dam, but you can also use a weighted shower curtain. So I always tell people, in an accessible, low barrier-free unit, using a trench drain with a weighted shower curtain is the best way to contain water. Keep that in mind moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit of time on tubs and tub showers. I don't spend a ton of time on this. I go through these very quickly. I'm seeing, except for probably the affordable housing segment, I'm seeing the usage of these and the specification of these being reduced a little bit depending on what region you're in. You know, these can have either removable or non-removable seats. This is actually a really good thing to use for people who can transfer with minimal assistance from their chair into the bathing unit. So clear floor space. What's the skinny on the clear floor space for a tub shower? Well, it's different. So for fixed seats at the head of the tub, you have to have an additional, which is in this picture on your right here, you have to have an additional 12 inches of clear floor space. This clearance does not apply for tub showers with removable seating. So slight difference there. You know, similarity here as far as controls are concerned. They must be located between the tub and the grab bar, and they got to be offset towards the exterior of the tub. Again, so somebody can come in from the outside and outside the unit and have access to those controls as well. Okay, control. So grab bars must be installed on the back wall, one located at 33 to 36 inches above the floor, the other one at 8 to 10 inches above the tub. And a grab bar must be installed here at the control end wall. See where I'm circling here, 24-inch grab bar must be installed at the front edge of the tub. And again, these are tubs with seats that need to have this. The good part about this is if you were to install or specify, this goes for showers and or tub showers. If you just say, hey, I need an ADA equipped unit, I need it to show up with everything installed in it, a manufacturer can do that for you. So it's not required for you to know that, hey, this has to be 33 to 36 inches. I just need to specify, hey, I need a white tub. I want the grab bars to be stainless steel and I want it to be ADA equipped. It will show up to the job that way. That'll be reinforced. Everything will be taken care of for you. So in addition to the side wall and control end wall grab bars, tubs containing removable seats must have an additional 12-inch long grab bar at the head end wall, as you see in this picture right here, towards the front edge of the tub, which is indicated in that lower box there. And so that's as much time as I spend, again, on tub showers. Most of the time, we're going to get requests for those from an ADA, and they're going to say, hey, I need these things ADA equipped. And again, that can be done. They'll be reinforced. Everything will show up to the job that way. So we're talking a little bit about accessories and changes in the 2010 standard. And one of those changes is the diameter of the grab bar, right? It used to be that 1.5 inches was the max. They changed that standard to go up to 2 inches. But the funny part about that is that everybody's going smaller. So they've allowed 1.25 inches, which has now become the industry standard. So if you were to say to anybody and you said, hey, I need this equipped with grab bars and seats, it's going to show up to the job with 1.25 inch grab bars on it, more than likely, unless you indicate otherwise. And then manufacturer can go source those and have those installed in the unit. It will add lead time to those units getting to your project, however. And you do want to be careful. You don't want to overspecify your grab bars, as you can see in this picture, that looks more like a ladder than it does grab bars, but funny nonetheless, if you do what I do for a living. The other thing that they changed is that, or they addressed, was the spacing between the wall and the grab bar. So I can only have a maximum of 1.5 inch between this wall and the grab bar. And that's really so people can't, an arm entanglement issue. So they're keeping you from putting that way out so people can't, maybe if they're falling, put their arm down in and get it stuck in there. They don't want that to happen. So 1.5 inch is the max. The other really big change that has affected our industry probably more than any other is this, I guess, protruding or projecting object into the unit. So a lot of our molds, a lot of manufacturers' molds have been around for a long time. They have soap dishes installed in them. When the 2010 standard came out, and they're part of the mold, but when the 2010 standard came out, they said you can have a maximum, a minimum, excuse me, of 12 inches between the grab bar and the soap dish. So no object can come within 12 inches of that grab bar. So what has kind of been the trend is that everybody's going, any new models we have are coming out, they're not going to have molded soap dishes in them. We're just going to move those away from them for the most part, except for maybe some FHA stuff. But from an ADA standpoint, nothing. We're not going to have that, have those in there. And what the trend now is that we're going to recessed soap dishes. So if you order a project and you say, hey, I want recessed soap dishes, the manufacturer, depending, will cut the hole in for you, and then we'll ship it loose, and then it'll be installed within the wall cavity once it gets out into the field. Now, the only caution I can give you on that is that if you've got a firewall or another reason where you can't have the penetration, we're gonna have to rethink where those recessed soap ledges can go, but we can really put those anywhere for you if you decide that you want them someplace else. Big trend there. As far as the strength of grab bars, a shower is kind of made where it's made inside out, right? So you have a mold, you spray the inside of it, basically the part that you see first, and then you put a layer of resin and fiberglass over that, and then you put wood, or we use a product called Armor Core on that. So you kind of lay that in, and then you encapsulate that with another layer. And what that allows you to do, is to have reinforcement in the shower so you can hit these 250 pounds of stress that's required. There's a third-party testing company out there called IAPMO, and pretty much every manufacturer, they come in and they audit and they pull products off and they test them. Everybody's required to have that 250-pound stress with their grab bars. So again, grab bars are kind of becoming, there's a goal out there, regardless of the facility, of trying not to have an institutional feel. And we do a lot of healthcare and senior living. And so there's a whole lot of colored grab bars being done out there. There's different types of grab bars you can do. You can still have them in the correct placement from an ADA code standpoint, but they don't have to look like the grab bars that were in the nursing home that my grandparents were in 30 some odd years ago. And the same thing goes for seats. Right, and there's a whole bunch of different things you can do with seats. You'll see this top picture here. These are the most common, or kind of the industry standard. These are what's called phenolic, or it's a hard plastic, really. And they typically come in white or wood grain. You can do things like padded seat. There's a whole lots of ways you can get creative. I would not recommend this bottom picture, however. That's not going to get you any get out of jail free card with your code community, however. But lots of different things you can do to kind of dress these things up for your clients. This next slide is actually becoming more and more of a topic depending on what region you're in. And the biggest thing that it's talking about here is the seat must be between 17 and 19 inches above the finished floor, which isn't a problem with most tubs, because 18 inches is a pretty common apron height. However, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, for instance, or perhaps in other areas, there's some changes to how buildings are being designed from a structural standpoint, meaning they don't want the drains to go down through the floor. They want them to go into the wall. We call these above floor rough tubs. And a lot of times these things will have 21-inch or more apron heights, which in doing so, it won't allow me to meet that 17 and 19 inches. So you kind of have to be careful if you've got a project where I got these AFR tubs all over there, and then you go, oh, wait a minute, I got some accessibility requirements. You're going to have to look at doing something a little bit different there. And now we have actually started designing AFR tubs with 18-inch aprons that are above floor rough, excuse me. However, those are going to have obviously a shallower bathing well in them than a typical 18-inch apron height tub would. But I have run into issues where we've gotten into projects where, like, okay, we really need, we want to match everything that's going on, and we need an AFR tub, and it wasn't available to meet codes. So keep an eye out for that in designing tubs. Okay, and then so regardless of the type of shower, there was a portion of the code that was modified to allow for a 3-inch distance. We're going to talk a little bit more about that moving forward and the reason for recessed or return flanges, but a 3-inch distance from the chair, from the compartment entry, excuse me, to the seat. And again, that's to allow somebody to come up in a chair and not have 10 inches that they have to hoist themselves over to get onto that seat. And the other thing that this did was they moved it back a little bit, and it helped get it out of the curtain line. So again, lots of people having trouble with water containment on these accessible units. This kind of helps in that regard. One of the other requirements, in addition to the grab bar stress we talked about earlier, is the seat requirement. So standard requires a 250-pound structural stress. You will notice that most, including ours, get upwards of 300 pounds. We also see kind of a trend where lots of folks are going to maybe aftermarket seats or seats with legs. So if you have something, let's say you were doing a patience of size project or something along those lines, there's lots of things that you can do there. Lots of seats with legs on them, but this is kind of the standard. If you don't specify it, you're going to get this fold-up seat without legs, and it's going to have about a 300-pound stress on it. And so with that, that is the ADA portion of our CEU. I'll stop here for a second to see if anybody else has any other questions. Okie doke. So like I said, that's kind of the longest part. We're going to move through the next couple pretty quickly because there are some similarities. And this next one we're going to talk about is the Fair Housing Act. And so it's FHA. It's not the Federal Housing Authority FHA. It's the Fair Housing FHA. And sometimes there are some confusions out there about that. But the idea behind this was it was designed to protect people from discrimination when they're buying or renting a home. And so that's the whole purpose behind this FHA. And so what is it exactly? It's actually a law. It's not a building code. It's Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. And it was created to prohibit housing discrimination based on color, race, religion, sex, or national origin. And then in 1988, it was actually amended to include disability. And when you think about disability, it's the only protected class that can be discriminated against just by the way a building is designed. That is, to my mind, when you really step back and think about that, extremely powerful statement. If that is the only class that can be discriminated against, just if some of those details aren't considered, that could be a problem for those folks. And so I think that's pretty powerful, to be honest with you. And so when does the FHA law apply in multifamily development? There's 4 points on there. I'm not going to read all those points. I do like to point out the third and the fourth one. The third one being if the building does have an elevator, every dwelling unit serviced by that elevator has to meet FHA guidelines. If it does not, only the ground floor has to meet those guidelines. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on out there. Lots of acronyms. We'll talk about that in a minute. But those are important for you to remember if you're doing a multifamily project. And so how do we follow it? How do we follow the Fair Housing Act? So there's several guides that help with that on how to be compliant. The one we're going to cover today was created by HUD, and it's known as the Fair Housing Act Design Manual. And it's categorized into 7 different requirements. So we're going to talk today about requirements 6 and 7 because those are the ones that pertain to tubs and showers. So how do we follow it? So in addition to the Fair Housing Act Design Manual, HUD recognizes 8 other documents for compliance in regards to construction. These are known as the safe harbors. So again, these are kind of your get out of jail free card. If you're following these, you'll be in good shape in regards to meeting the construction requirements of the Fair Housing Act. So the first one we're going to talk about is requirement 6. Okay, and this is really just about reinforcement for grab bars and the ability to have future accessibility, right? So you might not need them. The resident might not need them when they enter into that facility, but if that particular resident may not, but they may need it down the road, or a new resident may need to have some grab bars or some things of that nature. So this is where the idea for this reinforcement comes in, and it's required for both showers and tub showers. And we're going to talk about that here on this next slide. So I'm going to give you some examples. This is an example of a shower that would meet the reinforcement requirement. And the reason for that is that it's got a flat wall, and we can put backing in the areas that are typically reserved for seats and grab bars. So the seat backing is really only required in a transfer shower when it's the only bathing fixture in that unit. But if you go on a website and you say, hey, I'm going to order an FHA, it's typically going to come with reinforcement where it's typically reserved for those accessories. this is an example of a shower that would not meet it. And the reason it wouldn't meet it is because of these extended soak ledges here, right? You could not get a grab bar back here and then comply with that 1.5 inch distance from the back wall to the grab bar. You would have an arm entanglement issue there. And so it's important to realize when specifying a commercial project, there are differences in those units than a residential. I would consider this to be a residential unit and not a commercial unit. And so we're going to do the same thing with the tub shower, right? So here's the tub shower that meets the grab bar requirement. And so you can notice that there's like two variants here. I'm going to start with the one here where I'm circling in the top right of the slide. This shows backing in areas traditionally reserved for grab bars. The one on the bottom is a full wall reinforcement. So if you wanted to specify a shower and you're like, I think they might be doing something with, different placements, or somebody's really tall, or any of those things, I'm not sure. You can just say, hey, I want this thing fully reinforced. And the only downside of that would be is that it does cost more to do that. But again, it is a peace of mind for you knowing that that unit can have any accommodations made down the road. And so here's an example of a tub shower that would not meet it. And the reason it would not meet again is because of these protrusions into the projections into the shower back here, which means that doesn't have a flat wall back there. And when we could not get proper reinforcement in that unit. This is, again, a residential unit here. And so that is kind of the details around requirement 6. Just really refers to backing and backing placement. The next one we're going to talk about is requirement 7. And this is concerned with clear floor space. And there are some differences here. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. So there are some changes from an FHA standpoint to an ADA. And first and foremost is the FHA says I need to have a minimum of a 36 by 36 in a transfer shop. So I don't need to meet exact. I need to have at least 36 by 36. And the other thing that they actually do not address is a threshold requirement. So there is no threshold height requirement on an FHA unit. Most of them that you'll see, most manufacturers, including us, have a 4-inch threshold on them. I'm not sure where or how that started, but that actually seems to be the most common threshold height. And then the other difference you'll see is that you would need a 30-inch wide clear here versus 36 in the ADA. However, the 48-inch is the same. So similarities and difference between FHA and ADA. Okay. Clear floors, there's a lot going on here in this slide. And if you're not familiar with return flanges, this is going to be a good way to become familiar with them because they're a big deal and they're growing and growing more and more. So in this image, you can see right here that a wheelchair can approach this unit right here. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute where they can't. The reason that when you manufacture a shower, there's 2 types of flanges. I'm going to refer you to the bottom middle box here. The first one is a forward-facing, or what I call a straight flange on the left. The second one is what's called a return or a recessed flange. And the idea behind that is so I can drive the end the drywall, bring the drywall in from the side, and still be able to approach and have that 3-inch clearance between the chair, the wheelchair itself, and the seat inside. And the only way to do that is with this return flange. So only way for me to meet clear floor space. Here is a better depiction of that. So this is actually a nice illustration of I'm gonna have my drywall come in here. My nailing flange is back here versus being out in front of the unit, and that would not allow me to meet that clear floor space. And here is an example of why you have to do that. This would not work because this has 2 forward-facing flanges on it. Nobody could approach. Don't have the clear floor space there, so this would not be able to be modified for accessibility requirements. So that is the FHA. The big one here, I will say, is it's kind of funny. We used to have a lot of double return flanges, meaning we had a return flange on both sides. You can run into some issues again with firewall, not being able to maybe penetrate this wall. So we actually have a lot of units that are in the works now that have a straight flange on one side and a return flange on the other. So they become what were universal units now. They now actually have become handed units because we need to be able to accommodate both. If I can't penetrate this over here, I need to have a straight flange on it, but I still need to get my clear floor space on this side. So that is FHA. I'll stop for a minute. Anybody have any questions or challenges that they've had to deal with in FHA units in the past? Okay, and so the last segment is ICC or ANSI. Don't spend a ton of time on this, but in 1961, the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, published this A117.1, which was the first national standard for accessible design. And it's really become the most widely used accessible code in the United States. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's a lot of acronyms out there, and it can get very confusing. This slide is intended to provide you some clarification on that. Basically, what it's saying is the IBC is the code that provides the scope, meaning what is required to be accessible. So that's what the IBC does. ANSI tells you how to design it, and then the ICC is the council that develops the codes and standards. So that's essentially kind of just a brief overview of the differences between those three groups and what they do. And so when is this A117.1 required? It depends on what you're designing. Okay, so but basically it's a whole lot of information. What it's saying is that different levels of accessibility are required. How many levels of accessibility or how much is required is dependent on the type of facility and the anticipated needs. So if you look at like a rehabilitation hospital or a nursing home, you might have upwards of 100% that are required, whereas spaces like apartments or multifamily projects may need a lower number. However, they will need to be prepared to accommodate down the road, which is, again, where we were talking about the backing and things of that nature. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these next few slides because there's a whole lot of similarities here between this ICC and the ADA. The biggest difference, though, however, that you're going to find on these slides is the addition of this requirement for a vertical entry bar. This was not the case a few years ago. It is now. I do, however, tell my folks that are doing ADA or healthcare projects, it's really a good idea to have this entry bar here. However, it is required in what differentiates this code from the ADA code. Otherwise, everything else is the same. It does increase a required approach space over 88 to 52 inches in new buildings. The biggest reason for this change is the use of motorized wheelchairs and scooters. You can allow, as you can see in this bottom picture here, you can allow for 4 inches of that space to extend beyond the control wall. So it doesn't all have to be on one, from the control wall back. You can extend upwards of 4 inches past that control wall to meet that 48-inch clear floor space that's required. Okay, same here in a roll-in. I need a vertical entry bar. I'm not going to go through all of that. No difference here. Tub showers, I've got to have that additional vertical entry bar there. Everything else remains exactly the same. So that is your A117. This next one is type B. So those were type A. This is type B. We kind of refer to these as ANSI B units. If you're going on a website looking for things, you're going to see somebody that says ANSI B. And this is what this is referring to. And so type B units are basically they match FHA. So backing clear floor space requirements are the same, and there's actually no maximum on threshold height. So FHA and ANSI B are the same. And so I know I went through those last couple pretty quickly, but again, there's just if you need help, Paul and I are here to help you. And that ends the AIACU. Typically, if we're traveling around, back in the days we traveled a lot, we would take you out, we would show you maybe a product trailer, and Paul could actually do that down the road if you wanted to, where we can kind of show you what these products look like in person. But you can now rest assured that you have participated in the latest bathing solution code compliant presentation. And so with that, I'll open it up for any questions that any folks may have. Okay. All right. Well, Russ, if you're still on, sounds like maybe we are good to go here. If you wanted to get Paul and I, again, Paul's in Minnesota. I'm out west, so you folks are in San Francisco or Seattle. We would be happy to consult. This is kind of what we do. We're not really salespeople. We're more code kind of consultants to help you folks. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or you have any projects you'd like help with. And with that, we really appreciate your time today.
thank you, everyone, for answering the trivia questions on the side. Dan, I was offering gift cards on with questions on the side, so a lot of good answers. It's more fun when it's in person. Doing that, it gets really competitive, but it seemed like it got pretty competitive out there.
Okay, good. Good. Well, like I said, we're here to help, and thanks for your time, folks.
Nice work, guys. Paul, you want to hit stop on the recording? And I can send you the spreadsheet